His lawyer pointed at me like I was nothing. "Your Honor, this woman mops floors for a living. She can barely keep herself together, let alone raise 2 children." The courtroom was dead quiet. My ex sat there with this smug little grin, like the whole thing was already over, and maybe it should have been. I had no lawyer, no money, no family backing me up, but what nobody in that room knew, not even the judge, was about to change everything. Let me take you back about a year before that courtroom moment, because none of this makes sense unless you understand where I was coming from. My name is Denise. I was 34 years old, raising 2 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment that always smelled like the laundromat downstairs. My son Marcus was 9, my daughter Alyssa was 6, and I was barely holding it together. I worked the night shift as a janitor at Whitmore College of Law, one of the most respected law schools on the East Coast. Every evening I would clock in at 6. And by the time I left the building, the sun was already coming up. I mopped lecture halls, I scrubbed bathrooms, I emptied trash cans full of coffee cups and crumpled up case notes from students who would probably be making 6 figures within a few years. Nobody at that school knew my name. I wore a gray uniform and kept my head down. That was the deal. Show up, do your job, go home. But here's the thing about working in a law school after hours. The building is empty, but the knowledge is everywhere. Casebooks left open on desks, practice exams pinned to bulletin boards, constitutional law outlines taped inside study rooms. I started reading them, not because I had some big plan. I read them because I had nothing else to do between mopping and waiting for the floor to dry. At first, I barely understood any of it. Torts, civil procedure, contracts. It felt like reading a different language, but I kept going. Night after night, floor after floor, I would clean a room and then sit in the back row for 5 minutes and read whatever was left behind. There was this one night early on when I was cleaning Professor Marsh's lecture hall. She had left a casebook open on the podium. It was a family law case, a custody dispute between 2 parents, and the ruling was all about what the court considered the best interest of the child. I stood there reading it for 20 minutes, mop in one hand, the book in the other. Something about that phrase stuck with me. The best interest of the child. It sounded so simple, but the legal reasoning behind it was layered and complex. I thought about Marcus and Alyssa. I thought about what their best interest actually looked like, and I realized I wanted to understand this, not just skim it, really understand it. Months went by. I started recognizing patterns. I started understanding how arguments were structured, how one case built on another, how lawyers used precedent like building blocks. One night, I found a full practice exam for family law sitting on a professor's desk. I read every question. Then I went home and looked up every answer on a library computer during my lunch break the next day. I got most of them right. That was the night something shifted inside me. Not confidence exactly, more like a dare I made to myself. What if I actually tried? What if the woman who mops the floors could sit in the chairs instead? Now let me tell you about Kevin because he is a big part of this story. Kevin and I got married when I was 23. He was charming, good-looking, the kind of man who could walk into a room and make everybody feel like he was their best friend. He had this laugh that made people lean in closer. He had this way of making you feel special, like the whole world was just background noise and you were the only thing in focus. But behind closed doors, Kevin had a different talent. He had a way of making me feel small, not with his fists, never that. With his words, "You are not smart enough. For that, why would you even try? Denise, you clean toilets. Be realistic." He never yelled it. He said it calmly, casually, almost lovingly, like he was doing me a favor by lowering my expectations before the world could. That is the thing about people like Kevin. They do not break you all at once. They chip away at you so slowly that by the time you realize how small you have become, you cannot even remember what it felt like to stand at full height. Every time I mentioned wanting more, wanting to go back to school, wanting to learn something new, wanting to do anything beyond what I was already doing, he would shut it down. And the worst part is, I believed him. For years, I believed every word. When I told him I wanted to apply to the part-time law program at Whitmore, he actually laughed. Not a mean laugh. Worse, a pitying one. He tilted his head and looked at me the way you look at a kid who says they want to be an astronaut. "Baby, come on. You did not even finish. Your associate degree." He was right about that part. I had dropped out of community college when Marcus was born. I was 19. I did not have a support system. I did not have money. I barely had enough diapers to make it through the week. School was a luxury I could not afford. But he was wrong about everything else. Dead wrong. I applied to Whitmore anyway. I did not tell him. I used my employee tuition benefit. The school offered free classes to full-time staff, and I enrolled in the evening program. The same building I cleaned at night, I studied in during the day. For 2 years, I lived on about 4 hours of sleep. I would drop the kids at school at 7:30, attend lectures until noon, sleep for 3 hours, pick up Marcus and Alyssa, make dinner, help with homework, read them a story, put them to bed, and then head to work by 6. I would clean until midnight, study in empty classrooms until 3, and be home by 4. Then I would do it all again. My body hurt all the time. My hands were cracked from cleaning solutions. My back ached from bending over mop buckets and from hunching over casebooks. I kept coffee in a thermos and eye drops in my pocket. Kevin never noticed. Or maybe he did and just did not care. By then, our marriage was basically a business arrangement. He paid part of the rent. I did everything else. Then one day, I came home early from class. The apartment was supposed to be empty. Kevin usually worked until 5, or at least that is what he told me. I heard music coming from the bedroom. That should have been my first clue. Kevin never played music at home. I opened the door and found him with another woman. She was younger, pretty, sitting on the edge of our bed like she lived there. Kevin looked up at me like I had walked in on him, watching television. "It is not what you think," he said. The woman grabbed her shoes and left without a word. Kevin started talking, but I do not remember what he said. Something about loneliness. Something about how I was never around anymore. I did not yell. I did not cry. I just stood there for a long moment, looking at this man I had given 12 years of my life to, and all I felt was tired, bone deep, soul level tired. Not heartbroken, just done. I turned around, picked up my bag, and left. I stayed at my neighbor, the Mrs. Patterson's apartment that night. She made me tea and did not ask questions. The next morning, I filed for divorce. That is when everything got ugly. Kevin did not want the kids. Let me be very clear about that. He had never been a hands-on father. He missed school plays. He forgot birthdays. One time he picked Marcus up from soccer practice 45 minutes late because he was at a bar watching a game. Marcus was sitting alone on the curb when I got the call. He was 7. But the moment I filed for divorce, Kevin suddenly became Father of the Year. He started posting photos with the kids on social media. He started showing up to school, events he had ignored for years. He even bought them gifts, big, expensive, flashy things that confused Marcus and thrilled Alyssa. It was a performance, and everybody was watching. I knew what he was doing. It was not about the kids. It was about control. If he could take them from me, he won. That was all it ever was with Kevin. Winning. His parents had money, not wealthy, but comfortable enough to hire a real attorney, a man named Douglas Keller from a downtown firm with marble floors and leather chairs, the kind of lawyer who wore cufflinks, used words like "furthermore," and called judges by their first names at bar association dinners. I could not afford a lawyer. I went to 3 legal aid offices. 2 had waiting lists that were 6 months long. The third told me my income was technically too high to qualify, even though after rent, utilities, food, and school supplies, I had about $40 left at the end of each month. So I decided to represent myself, me, a janitor, in family court, against a man with a real attorney and parents writing checks. The first hearing was a disaster. Keller filed a motion, arguing I was an unfit mother. He cited my work schedule, nights, weekends, irregular hours. He painted a picture of a woman who was never home, who left her children unsupervised, who could not provide a stable environment. He made it sound like Marcus and Alyssa were raising themselves while I mopped floors somewhere in the dark. None of it was true. Mrs. Patterson watched the kids every night I worked. They had dinner, they did their homework, they went to bed on time. But in a courtroom, the truth does not matter as much as how the truth sounds. And Keller was very, very good at making things sound a certain way. The judge scheduled a full custody hearing for 3 months later. I walked out of that courtroom, feeling like I had already lost. Kevin was standing in the hallway with his parents, all 3 of them smiling like they had just won the lottery. That night, I went to work at Whitmore like I always did. But instead of starting my shift with the first floor hallway, I went straight to the library. I pulled every family law textbook I could find. I read case precedents until my eyes burned. I took notes on legal pads I found in the recycling bin, the ones students threw away with only 1 page used. I was not just studying anymore. I was building a case. Over the next 3 months, I documented everything. Every single time I picked the kids up from school. Every doctor's appointment I scheduled and attended. Every parent-teacher conference where I sat alone because Kevin could not be bothered. I created a binder, a thick, heavy binder, with receipts, calendar entries, text messages, and letters from Marcus's teacher and Alyssa's pediatrician, confirming that I was the primary caregiver. I also subpoenaed Kevin's phone records. I learned how to do that from a civil procedure textbook. His text told a story he did not want anyone to hear, canceled pickups, ignored calls from the school, messages to his girlfriend during hours he claimed he was watching the kids. Meanwhile, I kept going to class. I kept mopping floors. I kept sleeping 4 hours a night. My classmates did not know I was a janitor. The janitorial staff did not know I was a student. I lived in two worlds, and nobody in either one knew the full picture. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, something incredible happened. I took the bar exam, the actual bar exam. I had been studying for it alongside my coursework for over a year, using practice tests I found in the recycling bins and old prep books from the library's donation pile. I sat in a convention hall full of people, half my age, all of them in nice clothes, all of them with laptops and color-coded notes and expensive pens. I sat in the back row in the same sneakers I wore to clean floors, with a number 2 pencil and a heart beating so hard I thought the person next to me could hear it. 6 weeks later, the results came back. I opened the letter in the bathroom at work, sitting on the floor between a mop bucket and a supply cart. I passed. First try, top 12%. I sat there for a long time, staring at that piece of paper. I thought about every night I had spent reading in empty classrooms. Every morning I had dragged myself to lecture on no sleep. Every time Kevin told me I was not smart enough, and I just let the tears come. Quietly, alone, on a bathroom floor, surrounded by cleaning supplies. I did not tell anyone. Not Kevin, not my mother, not even Mrs. Patterson. I just folded the letter, put it in my dresser drawer, and went to work that night like nothing happened. But I did do one thing. The next morning, I walked into the office of Professor Helen Marsh. She was the most respected family law attorney in the state. She had argued before the Supreme Court. She had trained generations of lawyers. She also happened to teach at Whitmore, and I had been cleaning her office every night for 3 years. She had never looked at me, not once. To her, I was the person who emptied her trash can and vacuumed her carpet. I knocked on her open door. She glanced up from her laptop. "Can I help you? My name is Denise Carter. I have been cleaning your office for 3 years. I just passed the bar, and I would like to work for you." She stared at me for a very long time. Her expression did not change, but something behind her eyes shifted. Then she asked me one question. "Do you have a case you need to win?" I told her about Kevin, about the custody fight, about Keller, about sleeping 4 hours a night for 2 years, about the binder. She closed her laptop. She took off her reading glasses, and she said 5 words that changed my life. "Be at my firm Monday morning." The day of the hearing came. March 17th. I will never forget that date. I showed up in the same black dress I had worn to my grandmother's funeral 3 years earlier. It was the only formal thing I owned. I had ironed it twice the night before. Kevin was already there. New suit, fresh haircut. Keller beside him with a stack of folders and that polished, expensive energy that certain lawyers carry like cologne. When Kevin saw me walk in alone, he smiled. He leaned over and whispered something to Keller, and they both chuckled. I could feel it in my chest, that familiar sinking feeling of being the joke in someone else's story. Kevin's mother was in the gallery too. She had never liked me. She once told Kevin, in front of me, that he could have done better. "She will never amount to anything, sweetheart," she had said. I remember she was eating a salad when she said it, like she was just making small talk. The judge entered. He looked at both sides and frowned slightly when he noticed I had no attorney at the table. "Miss Carter, are you representing yourself today?" I took a breath. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. "No, Your Honor. My attorney will be here shortly. She is parking." Kevin's smile faded just a little. Keller glanced at the door, and then it opened. Professor Helen Marsh walked in, briefcase in one hand, reading glasses in the other. She was wearing a charcoal suit and carrying the kind of calm expression that only comes from decades of winning cases other lawyers would not touch. If you do not know who Helen Marsh is, let me put it this way. She had argued before the state Supreme Court 9 times and won 7. She had been on the cover of the National Law Journal. She had trained half the family law attorneys in the city, including, and this is the part that matters, Douglas Keller himself. Keller recognized her immediately. I watched the color leave his face in real time. He actually stood up from his chair, like a reflex, like a student who sees his professor walk into the room during an exam. Helen set her briefcase down beside me, adjusted her glasses, and turned to the judge. "Helen Marsh, Your Honor, representing the respondent. I do apologize for the delay." The judge raised both eyebrows. "Welcome, counselor. The court is glad to have you." Kevin looked at me, and for the first time in 12 years of marriage, for the first time in all those years of being told I was not enough, I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. Fear. What happened next was not a trial. It was a dismantling. Helen started with the finances. She presented evidence that Kevin had been hiding income, side jobs paid in cash, unreported freelance work, Venmo transactions that never showed up on his tax returns. She had bank records. She had a sworn affidavit from Kevin's own cousin confirming payments. The financial picture Kevin had painted, responsible father, steady provider, crumbled in about 12 minutes. Then she moved to the parenting. She submitted my binder. Every receipt, every school pickup log, every letter from teachers, doctors, and counselors. 3 years of meticulous documentation proving that I had been the sole functioning parent in that household, that I was the one who took Marcus to the dentist, the one who sat with Alyssa during her asthma attacks at 3 in the morning, the one who showed up. Keller tried to object. Helen shut him down. With case law he should have known. He had studied it in her class. Then she presented the phone records, Kevin's own texts, showing the canceled pickups, the ignored calls from the school, the messages to his girlfriend. During hours, he swore. In his affidavit, he was watching the children. The courtroom was silent as the judge read through them, one by one. Kevin's mother stopped smiling. Then came the moment I will never forget, the moment that made the entire last 2 years worth every hour of lost sleep. Keller, trying to recover, stood up and made one last argument. He straightened his tie, cleared his throat, and delivered it like he had rehearsed it in the mirror that morning. Your Honor, with all due respect, the respondent is a janitor at a law school. She does not have the education, the resources, or the long-term stability to provide for these children. My client can offer them a real future. The courtroom was quiet. I could hear the air conditioning humming. Helen looked at me. She gave the smallest nod, almost invisible, like she was saying, "This is yours now." I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. Your Honor, I would like to address that directly, if I may. The judge nodded. Go ahead, Miss Carter. My name is Denise Carter. I have been a janitor at Whitmore College of Law for the past 5 years. During that time, I enrolled in their part-time law program using my employee tuition benefit. I completed my degree while working full-time nights and raising 2 children as a single mother. I paused. The courtroom was completely still. 6 weeks ago, I passed the state bar examination on my first attempt. I scored in the top 12%. I am now a licensed attorney in the state, and as of last Monday, I am an associate at Marsh and Wakefield, Professor Marsh's firm, specializing in family law. Nobody moved. Kevin's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Keller sat down slowly, like the chair might collapse if he moved too fast. Kevin's mother put her hand over her mouth. The judge leaned forward. He took off his glasses and set them on the bench. Ms. Carter, you passed the bar while working full-time as a janitor and raising 2 children on your own? Yes, Your Honor. He paused for a long time, the kind of pause that fills an entire room. I have been on this bench for 22 years. I have heard every kind of argument you can imagine. People fight over money, houses, cars, pride. He looked at Keller, then back at me. This is the first time someone has made me proud to sit in this room. The judge ruled in my favor, full custody. Kevin was granted supervised visitation every other weekend. Keller's motion was denied in its entirety. Every single claim of unfitness was dismissed. After the ruling, Keller asked for a recess. He walked straight to Helen and said something quietly. Later, she told me what it was. I should have known better than to go up against you, Professor. Helen smiled and said, You did not go up against me, Douglas. You went up against her, and she pointed at me. Kevin tried to talk to me outside the courtroom. He started with some line about how we could still work things out, how he was sorry, how he always knew I was smart. I did not let him finish. Kevin, for 10 years, you told me I was not smart enough. You told me to be realistic. You made me believe the only thing I was good for was cleaning up after other people. I looked him dead in the eyes. I cleaned up today too, just not the way you expected. I picked up my kids from Mrs. Patterson's that afternoon. Marcus asked me how it went. I told him we were staying together, all 3 of us. He hugged me so hard I almost fell over. Alyssa did not fully understand what had happened. She just asked if we could get pizza for dinner. I said yes. We ordered a large pepperoni and ate it on the living room floor, and for the first time in a very long time, the apartment did not feel small. That was 2 years ago now. I still work at Marsh and Wakefield. I specialize in family law. Specifically, I represent women who cannot afford attorneys, women who show up to court alone. Women who get laughed at, because I know what that feels like. I know the weight of walking into a room where nobody believes you deserve to be there. Every now and then, I still walk through the halls of Whitmore at night, not to clean, just to remember. I pass the lecture halls where I first learned what a tort was, the library where I studied until 3 in the morning, the recycling bins where I used to fish out legal pads with only 1 page used. The floors are clean. Someone else mops them now. But every time I walk through that building, I think the same thing. These floors taught me more than any classroom ever could. Because it was down on my knees, scrubbing tiles at midnight, that I decided I was worth more than what the world told me I was. My name is Denise Carter. I used to mop floors for a living. Now I win cases, and I'm just getting started. The judge looked down at me and said, "Sir, do you understand that without legal representation, this court may have no choice but to grant your children's petition?" I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. I was 76 years old, sitting alone at a table meant for two, and my own 3 children were trying to take everything I had ever built. The courtroom felt enormous. The ceiling was too high, the lights were too bright, and then, from the back of the room, I heard a voice I had not heard in 20 years. My name is Arthur Hollis, and if you had seen me that morning, sitting in that courtroom in my one good suit with my hands shaking on the table, you would have thought I was a man with nobody left in the world. You would have been almost right. Let me start from the beginning, because the ending does not make sense without it. I built my life around one thing: family. I was a carpenter by trade, worked with my hands since I was 15, started my own business at 28, building custom cabinets and furniture for homes across the county. Nothing fancy, honest work, honest money. Over 40 years, I built that shop into something real. Not a fortune, but enough. A house with no mortgage, a workshop full of tools, a savings account that meant I would never have to worry. My wife, Ruth, and I raised 4 children: Thomas, David, Stephen, and our youngest, Margaret. The boys were close in age, thick as thieves growing up, always competing with each other over everything: grades, sports, who could eat the most at Thanksgiving. Margaret was different. She came along 6 years after Stephen. Like an afterthought, God slipped in at the last minute. Quiet girl, thoughtful. She spent more time in my workshop than any of the boys ever did. She liked watching me measure and cut and sand. She would sit on a stool in the corner and read while I worked. When the boys grew up, they all went into business. Thomas got into real estate. David started a car dealership. Stephen went into insurance. They did well for themselves. Nice houses, nice cars, nice wives. But somewhere along the way, they stopped coming around. The Sunday dinners got less frequent. The phone calls got shorter. Eventually, it was just Christmas and maybe a birthday. Margaret was different. Margaret stayed close. She went to college on an academic scholarship and studied forensic science, handwriting analysis, document examination, that sort of thing. She worked for a state crime lab for years. She was brilliant, quiet like her mother, but sharp in ways that caught people off guard. Then Ruth got sick, cancer. It came fast, and it was cruel. The last 8 months were the hardest of my life. The boys came around more during that time, but it felt performative. They showed up, stood around looking uncomfortable, and left. Margaret was the one who stayed. She was there every day. She held Ruth's hand when I was too exhausted to keep my eyes open. She slept on the hospital floor. She handled the insurance calls and the pharmacy runs and the paperwork. Ruth passed on a Tuesday morning in October. The maple tree in our front yard was bright orange. Margaret was holding her left hand. I was holding her right. After the funeral, something shifted. The boys started calling more, not to check on me, to ask about the house, about the savings, about the business. Thomas was the first. "Dad, you are getting older. Have you thought about what happens to the property?" David was next. "You should probably start putting things in order, just in case." Stephen was the most direct. "We need to talk about the estate." The estate. My wife was not even cold in the ground, and they were already dividing up the furniture. I told them all the same thing. I am fine. I am healthy. The house is mine, and when the time comes, everything will be handled fairly. That should have been the end of it. But then Margaret and I had a falling out. It was not about money. It was about something personal, something between a father and a daughter that I am not going to get into because it still hurts. The point is, words were said that should not have been said. Feelings were damaged, and Margaret left. She moved to another state, and for 20 years, we did not speak. Not a single phone call, not a letter, not even a Christmas card. That was the worst loss of my life, worse than Ruth in a way, because Ruth did not choose to leave. The boys saw their opportunity. With Margaret gone, they circled in. They started coming around more, helping with groceries, mowing the lawn. Small things that looked like kindness but felt like positioning. I am old, but I am not stupid. I could see what they were doing. They were investing. They were making sure they were in the will. Then, about 6 months ago, something happened that I did not see coming. Thomas showed up at my door with a lawyer and a stack of papers. He said the 3 of them, Thomas, David, and Stephen, were filing a petition with the court to declare me mentally incompetent. They said I was showing signs of dementia. They said I had been making erratic financial decisions. They said it was for my own safety. None of it was true. I was 76 years old, and yes, I moved slower than I used to. I forgot where I put my glasses sometimes, but I could still build a cabinet from scratch. I could still balance my checkbook. I could still remember every birthday, every anniversary, every detail of every argument I had ever had with my sons. The papers they wanted me to sign would have given them full control of my finances, my house, and my business. Everything I had spent my life building, gone in a signature, I refused to sign. So they went to court. Their lawyer presented an affidavit, signed by a doctor I had never met, claiming he had examined me and found significant cognitive decline. They also presented financial documents showing I had recklessly donated $50,000 to a local charity, money they said a person in their right mind would never have given away. I did donate that money to the hospital where Ruth died. They had a program that helped families who could not afford cancer treatment. I gave that money on purpose, with a clear mind and an open heart. It was not reckless. It was the most intentional thing I'd ever done. But sitting in that courtroom, alone, with no lawyer, watching my own sons try to take everything, I could not find the words. My hands were shaking. My throat was tight. The judge was asking me questions, and I kept losing my train of thought, not because I was incompetent, because I was heartbroken. The judge gave me a concerned look. "Mr. Hollis, do you have anyone to speak on your behalf?" I shook my head, and that is when it happened. A voice from the back of the courtroom. Calm, clear, and steady. A voice I had not heard in 20 years, but would recognize anywhere. "Your Honor, I would like to speak on behalf of my father." I turned around. Margaret was standing in the last row. She was older now, gray at the temples like me. She was wearing a navy blazer and carrying a leather folder. She looked like Ruth. She looked exactly like Ruth. Thomas went white. David started whispering to their lawyer. Stephen just stared. Margaret walked to the front of the courtroom. She introduced herself and stated her credentials. 23 years of forensic document analysis, expert witness in over 40 trials, certified by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners. Then she opened her folder. "Your Honor, I have had the opportunity to examine the affidavit submitted by the petitioners, allegedly signed by a Dr. Raymond Falk." The judge looked at the document. "Go on." "Dr. Falk's signature on this document is inconsistent with his known signature samples from medical board records and published articles. The stroke pressure, letter spacing, and baseline alignment suggest this signature was produced by a different hand." She placed two large printouts on the evidence table, side by side, the real signature and the one on the affidavit. Even from my seat, I could see they were different. "In my professional opinion, this signature is a forgery." The courtroom erupted. Thomas's lawyer asked for an immediate recess. The judge denied it. He asked Margaret if she had any additional findings. She did. I also examined the financial documents submitted to support the claim of erratic spending. Several entries appear to have been altered after the original printing. Specifically, deposit amounts were modified and dates were changed to create the appearance of unusual activity. She showed the evidence, pixel analysis, ink density comparisons, font kerning, inconsistencies that proved the numbers had been digitally changed after the documents were printed. The judge looked at Thomas, then at David, then at Stephen. "Counselor," he said to their lawyer, "I strongly suggest your clients consider the legal consequences of submitting forged documents to this court." Their lawyer looked like he was going to be sick. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Hollis, this petition is denied, and I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for further investigation." Thomas tried to stand. "Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding." "Sit down, Mr. Hollis." It was the first time I had ever heard anyone use my last name to silence one of my sons. After the hearing, Margaret and I stood outside on the courthouse steps. We did not say anything for a long time. 20 years is a lot of silence to break. Finally, I asked her, "How did you know?" She looked at me and said, "Thomas called me 3 months ago. He wanted me to sign a statement supporting their case. He offered me a cut of the estate." "And you said no?" I said no, and then I started looking at the documents. I started crying. Right there on the courthouse steps, at 76 years old, with people walking past and pigeons on the railing. I did not care who saw. Margaret put her arm around me. "I am sorry I stayed away so long, Dad. I am sorry I let you." She drove me home that afternoon. We sat in Ruth's kitchen and drank coffee and talked until it was dark outside. She stayed for a week. Then she went home, packed her things, and moved back to be closer to me. Thomas, David, and Stephen are under investigation. I do not know what will happen to them. Part of me still loves them because they are my sons, but they chose money over their own father, and that is something I will carry with me until the day I die. Margaret and I have dinner together every Sunday now. Sometimes we talk about Ruth. Sometimes we just sit in the workshop and listen to the radio. It is not perfect. 20 years is a deep hole, but we are filling it, one dinner at a time. If you are listening to this and you have someone you have not spoken to in a long time, a parent, a child, a sibling. Do not wait for a courtroom to bring you back together. Pick up the phone. Say the hard thing, because time is not as generous as we pretend it is. The developer's legal team filled an entire row. 4 attorneys, 2 paralegals, matching briefcases, matching confidence. On the other side of the courtroom, there was just me, Frank DeLuca, 61 years old, standing in my one clean shirt, holding a folder full of papers I printed at the library. The judge looked at their side, then at mine, and asked, "Mr. DeLuca, do you have legal counsel?" I said, "Yes, Your Honor. She should be here any minute." I had no idea if that was true. Let me tell you how I got there. I own a repair shop in Sycamore Falls, a little town about 40 miles outside the city. Population maybe 9,000, depending on who you count. My shop sits on the corner of Main and Pine, same spot for 37 years. I fix everything: cars, lawnmowers, generators, tractors. If it has an engine and it is broken, people bring it to me. The building is not much to look at. Cinder block walls, a corrugated metal roof, a hand-painted sign my daughter made when she was 12 that says, "DeLuca Repairs. We fix it right." The parking lot has cracks big enough to trip over, and the front door sticks when it rains. But every bolt in that building belongs to me. I bought it outright in 1991 with money I saved working double shifts at a factory that does not exist anymore. My wife, Gloria, passed 7 years ago. Heart attack. Fast, at least. She was making spaghetti. But by the time the ambulance arrived, she was gone. We never had kids of our own. She could not, and we never got around to the adoption thing. So it was just me and the shop. I am not telling you this so you feel sorry for me. I am telling you so you understand what that shop means. It is not just a business. It is the only thing I have left of a life that made sense. About a year ago, a company called Bridgewater Development started buying up property in Sycamore Falls. Big company, city money. They wanted to turn the downtown strip into a mixed-use development. Condos on top, retail on the bottom. The kind of place that sells $8 coffee and has a co-working space nobody uses. They bought the hardware store. They bought the old barber shop. They bought the empty lot behind the church. One by one, the businesses on Main Street disappeared and the buildings came down. Then they came for me. A man in a suit showed up at my shop one afternoon. Clean hands. Never changed a tire in his life. He handed me a business card and said Bridgewater was prepared to offer me $150,000 for the property. I told him no. He came back a week later with a higher offer, $200,000. I said no again. The third time, he did not bring an offer. He brought a warning. "Mr. DeLuca, this development is going to happen with or without your cooperation. We would prefer it be with." I told him to get out of my shop. 3 weeks later, I got served. Bridgewater Development was suing me. They claimed my building was in violation of a dozen municipal codes, structural deficiencies, fire safety violations, environmental hazards. They argued the property was a public safety risk and should be condemned and transferred to them through eminent domain proceedings. Every single violation they cited had existed for years and had never been flagged. The fire department had inspected my shop 8 months earlier and passed it with no issues. But suddenly, after I refused to sell, my building was a death trap. Funny how that works. I could not afford a lawyer. Not a real one. The cheapest attorney I talked to wanted a $5,000 retainer just to review the case. I had savings, but not that kind of savings. So I did what I always do when something breaks. I tried to fix it myself. I went to the library and spent 3 days reading about property law, eminent domain, and municipal code enforcement. I printed out every document I could find, every inspection report, every fire department record. I organized it all in a folder, a single overstuffed folder held together with a rubber band. The hearing was set for a Tuesday in November, but here is the part of the story I need to tell you, because without it, none of what happened in that courtroom makes any sense. About 4 years ago, I was closing up the shop on a Friday night. It was raining hard, the kind of rain where the road turns into a river. I was locking the front gate when I saw headlights on the shoulder about 100 yards down, hazards blinking. A car was stuck. Blown tire maybe, or engine trouble. I grabbed my toolbox and walked down there. Most people would not have stopped. It was dark, it was pouring, and the road out of Sycamore Falls does not have streetlights. The car was a silver sedan with out-of-state plates. Inside was a woman, maybe mid-40s, professional looking, clearly not from around here. She was on the phone and looked frustrated. When I knocked on her window, she flinched. I told her I was a mechanic. I asked if I could look at the engine. She hesitated, then nodded. It was the alternator. Dead. The battery had enough juice for hazards, but not enough to start the engine. I told her I could tow it to my shop and replace the alternator, but it would take until morning. She asked how much. I said, "Do not worry about it." She looked at me like I had said something in a foreign language. "You are not going to charge me?" "Ma'am, you are stuck on the side of the road in the rain in a town you have never been to. I am not going to charge you. I towed her car to the shop, replaced the alternator that night, and left the keys in the visor. In the morning, she came to pick it up. She tried to pay me again. I said no. She left a thank you note on the counter with her business card. I stuck it in a drawer and forgot about it. I never looked at the card. I had no reason to. She was just a stranger who needed help on a rainy night. Now fast forward to the Tuesday of my hearing. I showed up early. The courtroom was already half full. Bridgewater's legal team was set up on the left side. 4 attorneys, 2 paralegals, a laptop, a projector, a stack of binders, 6 inches thick. They looked like a law firm commercial. I sat on the right side with my rubber-banded folder. The judge entered. She looked at both tables and paused. Mr. DeLuca, do you have legal representation? I opened my mouth. I was about to say no. I was about to say I was representing myself and hope for the best and probably lose everything. But before I could speak, the courtroom door opened behind me. A woman walked in, navy suit, leather briefcase. She walked straight to my table and sat down beside me. Victoria Langston, Your Honor, appearing pro bono on behalf of the defendant. I stared at her. I did not recognize her at first. She looked different from the woman I had pulled off the side of the road 4 years ago. But then she turned to me and whispered, I still have the thank you note, Mr. DeLuca. I told you I would not forget. The lead attorney for Bridgewater, a man named Garrett Walsh, looked up from his laptop. He recognized her name before he recognized her face. And when it clicked, he leaned over to his colleague and said something I could not hear. But I could see the reaction. His colleague closed his laptop. Victoria Langston was not just any lawyer. She was a partner at one of the largest property rights firms in the country. She had won class action suits against 3 state governments. She had been named one of the top 50 attorneys in the nation by the American Bar Association. And she was sitting next to me, a mechanic with a rubber-banded folder. Victoria did not waste time. She filed a motion to dismiss the entire case. She argued that every code violation cited by Bridgewater had been manufactured after I refused their buyout offer. She presented the fire department's clean inspection from 8 months earlier. She showed internal emails obtained through discovery, where Bridgewater executives discussed applying pressure through code enforcement to force holdout property owners to sell. Those emails changed everything. The judge stopped the hearing and reviewed them in chambers. When she returned, she was not smiling. Counsel for the plaintiff, I have reviewed these communications. They suggest a deliberate and coordinated effort to misuse municipal code enforcement as a tool of coercion against a private property owner. This court finds that deeply troubling. Walsh tried to respond. Victoria cut him off with a countermotion. Not only was she requesting dismissal, she was filing a counterclaim for damages, harassment, and abuse of process. The judge granted the dismissal. She also referred the matter to the state attorney general's office for investigation into Bridgewater's conduct across all their Sycamore Falls acquisitions. Walsh and his team packed their briefcases in silence and left without shaking anyone's hand. After the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse with Victoria. My hands were shaking, but this time it was not from fear. Why? I asked. You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. She looked at me for a long moment. 4 years ago, I was having the worst night of my life. I had just lost a case I cared about. My marriage was falling apart. I was sitting in a broken car, in the rain, in the middle of nowhere, and I thought to myself, nobody stops anymore. Nobody helps a stranger. She paused. And then you knocked on my window. You fixed my car. You did not charge me a dime. And when I asked why, you said the most honest thing anyone has ever said to me. You are stuck on the side of the road in the rain, and I am not going to charge you. She looked at the courthouse behind us. When I heard what was happening to you, I thought, some people you just do not let loose. My shop is still standing. Same corner, same cinder block walls, same hand-painted sign my daughter made. The parking lot still has cracks big enough to trip over, and the front door still sticks when it rains. But now, on the wall next to the register, I have 2 things framed. The first is Victoria's business card, the one she left on my counter 4 years ago that I stuck in a drawer and forgot about. The second is a copy of the judge's ruling, dismissal with prejudice. Every now and then, someone new comes into the shop and asks us about those frames. I tell them the same thing every time. The card is from a stranger I helped once. The ruling is what she did in return. And then I get back to work. Because that is what I do. I fix things. If you are listening to this, remember something. Every act of kindness is a seed. You do not get to choose when it grows, or how, or what it becomes. But it always grows. Always. You might not see it for years. You might forget you even planted it. But one day, when you are standing alone in a courtroom with nothing but a rubber-banded folder, it might just walk through the door in a navy suit and save everything you have. Be the person who stops in the rain. The world will not always thank you for it, but when it does, you will understand why it mattered.